Hello and welcome back to my channel, everyone. In this video, we are going to check out the newly released Linux Mint 20. I'm going to install it on this laptop right here. This is an older System 76 lemur. I've had it for about 3 years. I've reviewed the new one recently. It's time to retire this one, but I figured one last round of videos is what I'm going to record on this machine, and this is going to be one of them. We are going to be checking out the Linux Mint 20 review. I'm going to be installing it directly on this machine. I don't use virtual machines unless I tell you guys otherwise. So we will see how this distribution performs on an older laptop, and then we'll check out all of the new features. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So here we are with a fresh installation of Linux Mint 20. So let's go ahead and check this out. Now off camera, I've already gone ahead and installed this. There's really nothing much to say about the installation process. It's essentially the same as it's always been. I've already created a video for installing Linux Mint 20. If you want to go ahead and check that video out, you can do so here. And that process basically walks you through installing Linux Mint as your only operating system. So that process will blow away your hard drive basically. And then I also have a video for dual booting Linux Mint 20 with Windows 10. That's available right here. So if you want to create a dual boot installation, you can go ahead and check out that video. But as far as the installation process itself is concerned, it takes about 4 or 5 minutes for me to get that installed, which is, that's plenty fast. There's really nothing much to say about the process because it hasn't really changed. It's the same installer we've been using for I don't even know how long now. I almost want to see it change just for the sake of seeing a change, but a change isn't really necessary because it does work. And then once it's installed, you get this welcome screen right here when you first log in, same as always. As you can see, we are running Linux Mint 20. And we can go ahead and click through here and check out a few things. And one of the things that I love about Linux Mint is that there's a lot of customization. So right here, it's basically saying that we can choose a desktop color. If you like dark mode, for example, you could go ahead and click that. So now I've enabled dark mode. And then we can actually click the different colors here to change various aspects of the theme, which is great because if green is not your favorite color, you could basically just choose a different primary color. And I'm going to go ahead and choose green because, that's actually my favorite, the default. So the dark theme actually looks quite nice. I think I'm going to keep that around. Now the panel layout, we have an option to enable traditional mode. Right now, it defaults to just showing a single icon for the running apps, which I like because it allows more apps to fit on the panel down here. So you can just go ahead and click this button right here to go ahead and switch it to the old school mode. Now we see the text on the button label. So I'm going to set that back to the default though, because I like the way that it is out of the box. If we scroll down, we can see some things here, and a lot of this is not new. There's actually not a lot new with this new release. There's some relatively big changes, some smaller ones. We'll get to that in a moment. But walking through here, you have the option of setting up system snapshots, which you should absolutely do if you intend on keeping this installation around. I'm not going to go through time shift in any kind of detail here, but effectively it allows you to set up system snapshots so that you have something to restore to if you have a problem later. I'll just click finish. I have entire videos about things like this. In fact, I do have a video on time shift already if you would like to check that out. We also have Driver Manager, and this is something that I recommend everybody click on when they install this for the very first time. And what this will do is if you have any hardware in your system that requires a proprietary driver, it'll give you an option to go ahead and install the driver for that. I don't really need anything here because all of the hardware on this machine, since it's a System 76 machine, it supports Linux or Linux supports it. So I don't really need any special drivers here. It even tells me no proprietary drivers are in use and there aren't any available, so I'm good to go. If you have like an NVIDIA card, for example, you'll probably see that here, and you should probably go ahead and get that installed for the best performance. We have the Software Manager, which is actually how we go ahead and install apps on Linux Mint. So we could go ahead and click on an app up here. It has some popular ones like, for example, GIMP. I'll click Install. So you can see how that process works. And Software Manager is available from the menu as well. If you start typing up here, it narrows down the list. We can see Software Manager is here in the menu, so if you need to get back to that, you can. And it's already installed GIMP. So installing software is super easy in Linux Mint. As you can see, I already have this installed. It was very painless to do. And I'll go ahead and click back. Let's get out of here. And we get links to the documentation, new features, and things like that if we would like to review that information. There's a section for help as well, and also a section if you are curious about how to give back to the project. You can go ahead and click on this to contribute. Essentially, nothing new there. If you've seen the welcome screen, you probably have noticed a few differences from previous versions, but for the most part, it's business as usual. Now, one thing I wanted to cover here is Warpinator. What an interesting name that is. The basic idea behind Warpinator is that it is a re-implementation of a previous Linux Mint app. I think it was called Giver, if I'm not mistaken. But essentially what this allows you to do is transfer files from one Mint computer to another, and it allows you to do that very easily. It's a lot easier than setting up an NFS share or a Samba share. So the idea is to give you the ability to transfer files between computers without having to do anything complicated. Now again, I have this installed on a System 76 Lemur, but I've also, on a different computer, started a live session in VirtualBox with Linux Mint, so we would have the ability to try this out. So what you're seeing right here is the virtual machine that is on a different computer that I'm running, and this is the IP address of that machine. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and click on this. And you can't see this, but my other computer, my virtual machine, shows that this user is connected. And then what I can do is go ahead and send files. I'll click Browse. I don't even really think I have anything to send because I just set this up. Don't have any pictures, for example. So what I could do is go here to other locations. I'll just go to Computer, and I'll click on, let's see, it's kind of pointless, but I'll click on User, Share. Should have wallpaper in here if I'm not mistaken. We do. Now obviously these wallpapers are going to be installed by default, but I just want something to send. I'm just going to randomly click on something here. Here's a screenshot, no problem. So I'm just sending this file over. And then on the other end, I had to click Accept. And what I'm going to do on the other end is send that file back to this machine so you can see what the process looks like on the other end. And we can see the alert on the upper right-hand corner. I'm basically just sending the same file back. I'll click Accept. It's already done because that's a very small photo or picture, whatever it is. So we have a Warpinator folder right here. I'll double click on that, and we can see that the file is there. That's where the file ended up when it was transferred over. So as you can see, this is a very easy tool to use to transfer files from one computer to another. And it's a very good way to collaborate on your LAN or your home network or whatever. I think this is actually a very useful utility. We'll get back to the video shortly, but I wanted to take a moment to mention my sponsor, Linode. Linode has been my infrastructure provider for well over a year now and has just recently announced their own managed Kubernetes service. Now you can combine Linode's ease of use and simple pricing with the infrastructure efficiency of Kubernetes. With the Linode Kubernetes engine, you can get your infrastructure and workloads up and running in minutes instead of days, and scale resources in real time to meet your infrastructure needs. With Linode's managed Kubernetes engine, pricing is simple. Only pay for what you use. And with Linode's 99.9% uptime SLA and bundled transfer, you can significantly cut costs when compared to AWS, GCP, and Azure. Designed with the open source ecosystem of Kubernetes, the Linode Kubernetes engine supports integration with tools like Helm, operators, and more. To help you get started with Kubernetes, Linode gives you access to in-depth documentation, video tutorials, and webinars. Go ahead and sign up at linode.com/learnlinuxtv to get a $60 60-day credit to test out LKE or any other of Linode's products. I really appreciate Linode's continued support of Learn Linux TV, so go ahead and check them out. You won't regret it. Now, let's get back to the video. Now, I just opened up the Update Manager because there's a little red dot on there. I'll click OK. And we can see that there are actually some updates available even on release day. So I'm just going to go ahead and install these updates so you can see what that process looks like. Put in my super secret password. So it's a pretty easy process, just like in previous releases. And we're just going to go ahead and let that finish. It should be pretty quick. So there you go. The updates were installed successfully. That was a painless process. And that makes sense because Linux Mint is known as being a distribution that is extremely easy to use. And I have to agree with that. It definitely is easy to use. And speaking of easy, I noticed a printer icon down here. I had a message pop up earlier that my Brother printer was successfully installed, and here it is. My Brother printer was a pain to install in the past, and it's detected automatically and set up here, which is pretty cool. And I can go ahead and print already, which is great. I don't have to manually set that up. That's one less thing for me to do. And one of the biggest new features, if I can even call it that, is the fact that the new release is based on Ubuntu 20.04. So that means we are running a newer kernel. As you can see right here, it ships with kernel 5.4. And that also means that we're going to have the latest drivers and all the latest apps available. And that's awesome because Ubuntu 20.04 is a great distribution to build your distribution on. So that's awesome. It's a long-term supported release, which is basically all Linux Mint builds on nowadays. Now, while I have the terminal open, there is another change that I would like to talk about real quick. And this change has been fairly controversial, and that is the blocking of Snap apps by default. Snap is a universal package type. There are other universal package types available for Linux as well. You know, there's Flatpak, for example, and AppImage. And, you know, some people out there are very vocal against Snap packages, even though I think they're great and they're a great compromise. But the developers of Linux Mint, they don't seem to be so keen on these. So they've gone ahead and done a little work to try to prevent these from being installed. Let's go ahead and see what that looks like in practice. So I'm going to install the Chromium web browser, at least I'm going to attempt to. So I'm going to do sudo apt install chromium-browser. I'll press enter. And there we go. Chromium has successfully installed. Now, what's odd though is that this is a very small package. It said that it's setting it up and it's ready to go, right? So let's go ahead and check that out then. Let's go ahead and go to Internet. And we can see that it is not available, even though we did install it. Now, if I just open up Synaptic, and I probably did that out of habit because we do have the software manager, but essentially what I'm going to do is search for that package. And we can see that it's listed right here. It's installed, but it's an empty package. It even says that right here. This is an empty package. It can be safely removed. So basically what's going on here is to prevent a Snap package from being installed, it's just going to install an empty package. If you didn't know any better, if you didn't read the news, if you don't read documentation, and you should read documentation obviously, but you would think that Chromium is installed and you wouldn't understand why it's not working. So they've effectively broken Chromium being installed through apt rather than, you know, showing a message or something on the screen to let you know what's going on. This could be kind of confusing. And it looks like they're going out of their way to prevent Snap apps from being installed. And to get around that, what we can do is just do sudo apt install snapd, which is the underlying framework that allows Snap packages to be installed by default. This package in itself isn't installed by default, which means out of the box we don't have Snap package support. But anyway, I'll press enter. And you know, it's not actually allowing us to install snapd either, which should work, but it doesn't. So what we can do then is do sudo rm/etc apt preferences.d We have no snap.pref right here. And obviously be very careful when you are removing files. You want to make sure you're removing the right thing. But essentially, from what I understand, we should be able to delete this file right here, which I just did. Let's do sudo apt update, make sure everything is up to date as far as the index is concerned. And let's try to do sudo apt install snapd. Press enter. And now we're able to install it. So this is a little misleading because it essentially allows us to install Chromium, the browser, as an apt package that actually doesn't work. And then we can, normally just install snapd to get support for snap packages. They've made that not work. They've effectively broken that, making us go through a few hoops to go ahead and get snap package support installed if that's something that we want. Now, I'm not going to get into anything political in this video. I mean, the way I look at it, if you like snap packages, go ahead and use them. If you don't like them, then don't. Everyone has their preference. I like snap packages, but I don't expect everyone to like them. And I can understand that a lot of people are annoyed by the fact that, on Ubuntu, you could do sudo apt install Chromium browser. You get a snap package of that instead. And maybe that's not what they wanted. So there is a little bit of concern there that some people might not appreciate that. And that's why a lot of people are vocal against snap packages. But then we also have Linux Mint, which are themselves vocal against snap packages, and they go out of their way to disable snap packages, which from what I'm seeing here is just going to lead to confusion. I don't really feel like they handled it in a proper way, and I don't feel like the developers of Linux Mint should be disabling snap anyway, because it's up to the user. If the user wants to run snap packages, they should be able to do so without jumping through any hoops whatsoever. And if they don't want to run snap packages, then they really shouldn't have to run them. The way that Linux Mint is handling this just seems overly political to me. I really think that's a waste of developer effort on their part. I mean, let's face it, Ubuntu is Ubuntu. You either like it or you don't, but it is the base for Linux Mint. And by choosing to base their distribution on Ubuntu, there's going to be some edge cases that they may not agree with, and some changes that they may need to make Mint work the way they want it to work. Now, there is an article on the Linux Mint website that tells you how to enable snap support. I will leave that link in the description below. So if snap packages are something that you want to install, then you can go ahead and follow that guide to go ahead and enable that. Now, when it comes to new features in this version of Linux Mint and Linux Mint 20, there's really not a ton to talk about. They did make small improvements all over the place. The theme has been cleaned up. It looks better. They have a different wallpaper. All the apps have been updated to the latest versions available as of the time I'm recording this video, so we're pretty much up to date. The performance is really good. So basically, they just focused on making everything work the best that they possibly can. And in my experience, Mint is stable and it's solid. It's fast, it's responsive, it gets the job done. Cinnamon is a great desktop environment. I love it. So I think that we have a winning combination here overall. Now, obviously, the big focus was rebuilding Linux Mint onto the new Ubuntu 20.04 base. So I didn't really expect there to be a lot of killer features. Warpinator is pretty cool, for example. And there's also a feature that basically handles NVIDIA video cards better in this release. And I think that's awesome because we have full support for hybrid graphics. Unfortunately, this laptop doesn't have hybrid graphics. And even if it did, you typically can't do screen recording effectively from hybrid mode. But basically what that allows you to do is run off of an Intel card on dual graphics laptops, for example. And then you can go ahead and select individual applications to run off the NVIDIA card, which saves battery life and can help keep your temperatures down. And then when it comes to Firefox, the default browser, which I was just playing around with, there's no surprise here. If you've ever used Firefox, you know what to expect. This is Firefox. Now, there is one difference, however, and that is when it comes to changing your search provider. So if I go up here to the upper right corner, and then I go to Preferences, and then I go to Search, we can go ahead and choose our default search engine, which actually defaults to Yahoo, as you can see right here. I think they get a little bit of a financial benefit for that, which is fine. I understand. You need to make some money, you need to pay your hosting costs. But you'll notice that Google is not on the list here. And, I was really hoping that they would stop disabling Google by default. Firefox comes with Google out of the box, and I could totally understand switching the default to Yahoo to get a little bit of extra money for your project. I get it, running a distribution is expensive, but I'm going to call it out in every video review I do as long as they keep doing this. This is horrible. They should not be actually disabling a search provider that would normally be here just because they themselves don't like it. Don't get me wrong, DuckDuckGo, that's my favorite search provider. It's available. That's the one I'm going to select. That's the one I like. But, if you like Google, you should be able to choose it. It's really not up to the Linux Mint developers to make that choice for us. And, they're going a step further and blocking snap packages by default, which is, even worse. So I'm going to scroll down here and find more search engines. And this is going to take us to a Linux Mint specific web page. And, we're going to go ahead and scroll down. And it's going to give us some information about what they recommend. And it's kind of small, but we do have Google. We see the icon right here. I'll click on that. And then it basically gives us the option to click here to add it to the available search engines. And then I'll click Add. And now we can see that it is added on the list. We do now have support for the Google search engine. I do have to call it like I see it. Linux Mint is a very good distribution. It's fast. It has great performance, like I mentioned. It's very easy to use. It even installed my printer automatically. There really isn't anything else to complain about. I mean, we don't have all that much in the way of new features here, but nor did I really expect there to be. Like I mentioned, this is building Mint on a brand new base, so I totally understand. But this is a solid release, and I really like this a lot. So as long as the Linux Mint developers are going to stay neutral on these political decisions such as Google and Snap, I think it would be even better because it's very important for a distribution to be neutral. And I feel like if the Mint developers were neutral when it comes to snaps, they'd actually be doing a better job handling this than Ubuntu is, which is clearly not neutral because they're just putting snaps on your system. So other than that, those complaints probably won't matter to most of you guys. So definitely check this out. I really recommend it. It's a great distribution. So let me know what you think of the new release in the comments below if you've had a chance to try this out yet. I'm curious to know what you guys think. As for me, I really do like this distribution. I did have a few complaints, but let's be honest, the things that I complained about are things that probably the majority don't care about because the majority just, you guys just want a fast distribution that's easy to install, makes your computer easy to use, and it's stable and it's fast. And Linux Mint checks all of those boxes. I mean, it even set up my Brother printer for me automatically. It's a great release. I do recommend that you check this out. So again, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Go ahead and click that like button if you like this video because that lets YouTube know you want to see more Linux content just like this. And make sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already done so. I have some awesome content coming very soon. So stay tuned and I will see you in the next video.